Hello, my beautiful cuddlebugs. Welcome to Ramblings of a Book Dragon, where we dive into the warmth of good books and unravel stories that feel like a literary hug. I'm Allie, your host, and I'm thrilled to embark on another cozy adventure with you. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, snuggle into your cozy reading nook, and let's begin. But before we do, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so that you won't miss a single episode. I really value your feedback and book recommendations. Now let's begin today's episode. Today I'm reviewing Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. This is a Gilmore Girls Hocus Pocus and Charmed book along with a small dash of the X Hex. We follow a witch named Essie Winterscale who lives in a huge and ever-changing house in the village of Goodwinter in Essex. She lives with various witches of various ages, one of them being Blessing, who does a lot with all sorts of things with pregnancy, reproduction, sex. She even has a greenhouse with massive Venus flytraps. It's all a whole thing. And then there's also Avery, who can alter perceptions and can change their appearance depending on how they feel that day. Lilith is Essie's mom, who's never really around. And finally, there is Maud, who can knit future, and she can also kind of see things in the future a little bit as well, but get all these different interactions, and the house can change depending on everyone's moves and moods. And stumbling into their life is Josh, a lawyer from the US who inherited a bunch of land and houses and discovered that they haven't paid taxes since the 1700s. And the house has a perception spell on it so that people who enter the house who aren't witches leave forget the house and everything in it as soon as they leave. And also only people who truly need the house can find it, which makes it interesting because it's a lot of people who are looking for Blessing, who's a midwife, who's needing help with pregnancy, or people who want to find Essie when it's time for their death, and she sits with them as kind of like seeing them to the afterlife. That's a lot of what Essie does as well, because Essie's big power is once a year she brings about winter. She brings about basically the first day of winter. We learn later that it's a lot deeper than that, but for our intents and purposes at the beginning of the book, she brings about winter. So for the rest of the year, she does other things like making sure that the house is kept up to date. She brought in the internet, and witches also have a slower aging system. So we don't really know how old anyone is in the house, but we do know that everyone ages really, really slowly. So while Essie may look to be about 30, we don't know how old she actually is. But Josh looks for the house. He's wandering around, and then he sees Essie. And Essie is curvaceous and a redhead, and she mistakes him because some of Blessing's Venus flytraps broke through the greenhouse. So they were needing someone to actually fix the roof. So she sees him in his clothing, and he doesn't exactly look like a lawyer or their new boss, basically their new person. So she invites him in, shows him around. He sees all the chaos of the house, and he also sees the Venus flytraps, and they're these huge things that really invite people to come in and sit down and sleep on them, but if they do, they will die. But they wander around, and he learns about some of the different doors. Like there's one door that you can travel back in time, and at first it's kind of weird because she says, oh yeah, it'll take you back to the 17th century, but then later on she says it'll take you back to almost whenever you want. So it sounds like it's mainly the 17th century, which is when Lilith lived, basically. That's the time, but it also sounds like she can go to other times in history as well, but it's Lilith who can really control that door. And then there's also a library where there's a windstorm at the moment, and it all depends on the time of day. And there's also cats and dogs and goats, and it just sounds like it's a very fun place. He leaves, and then he immediately forgets them. The thing though is that when he was first, he thought he could remember something, because the reason why is when he first entered the house that he had inherited from his father, there was this green orb in one of the rooms that broke when he arrived. He cut his finger on some of the glass, and then there was this old parchment paper, this really ancient parchment paper, and he could read a little bit of it, and it was talking about finding things, like finding witches, not letting them in. And he was kind of confused about it because he could read a little bit of it but not a lot. And then his blood touched the paper, and because of that he was able to remember them, but he doesn't really fully remember them immediately. But it was kind of like, the magic doesn't work as well on him as it does on normal people, because he seemed to kind of be drawn back to them, because they meet again later on at the pub and they wind up having drinks together because Essie is attracted to him too, and they have a really great first date. It's all very cute. And then she walks him back to his house, and she's like, oh, I'm not scared of anything is scared of me. And they have their first kiss, and in walks his sister Sienna. And unfortunately there's a bit of a miscommunication, because he was talking about his ex, and when Sienna, his sister, gets to the house, she's big and pregnant, and so Essie is pissed off, and because she thinks, oh, that's his ex-girlfriend. So she goes home, gets drunk, and then does a bit of an ex-hex book situation where she gets really drunk and accidentally summons her boyfriends of the past. So we learn that with her first boyfriend, when they were having sex for the first time, she accidentally froze his dick, unfortunately. And because when she orgasmed, she lost control of herself, and because she has the power to freeze things, he had to have all this surgery, all this corrective surgery and everything, and it just became a whole big mess. And when her three boyfriends saw her, they were all kind of a little bit pissed off at her. And because one of the things she drank that Avery made, it was but because they all arrived and were very angry, and because of this drink that she drank that kind of helped increase her power a little bit, she turned them into rats, because she called them rat bastards. So she had to chase them around with the help of the others in the house to turn them back to normal. But eventually they did catch them, and the final one that she caught was actually outside of Josh's house. And because of that, she was able to find out that actually Sienna is his sister. So that is the thing I like about this, is that it is a cozy romance. So while there may be a tiny little bit of a miscommunication, it's not as dramatic and it's not as annoying as some of the other romance novels. And I'll have to do a bit of a new overview of some of the other cozy, like the cozy genre as a whole, just to see kind of what's in there and kind of give an overview, deep dive of the whole situation. But yeah, it's all very fun and cute and sweet, and they finally decide to try to do things again, and he doesn't know that she's a witch, but he does notice some kind of unusual things happening, and it's all fine and dandy at first until Essie's mother comes back and says, hey, we need to do this. You need to freeze the earth now, ahead of schedule. And she's like, no, it's not until like a week from now. And she says, no, you need to do this now, because you thought that you were just freezing the earth, but actually you were keeping this demon asleep, this baddie away from harm. Like you're basically saving the earth and everything. And it's just like, okay, really? Like, I kind of wish we had a little bit more of the time with the rats, because basically they were kind of just sent on their way. It kind of reminded me a bit of the X-Hex, except there was a bit more time spent there. But yeah, it's just, at least the miscommunications are quickly and easily resolved in this book, and it's just all very fun. I mean, the laugh out loud funny, there were things that were funny, but it wasn't too terribly funny. And then they're trying to freeze the guy, and we find out that the guy is actually this old witch finder from the 1600s who murdered also hundreds of innocent women, and he is actually related to Josh. Like, he's a many times ancestor, and Essie has premonitions, and she's like, oh, this is actually a new thing. This is actually how this works. And so the spirit rises out of the earth, chases them around, and they go through Lilith's store, and they wind up in 17th century England. And they don't know where they are. They don't know when they are. They quickly learn that it's around 17th century England, and the witch finder finds them, and they're basically tried as witches, but then they find that they're actually back in the same house as before, and we meet him, and she realizes it's a bit of like in Harry Potter when he realizes, oh, I did this before because I saw myself doing this before. So she realizes, oh, this was always something that I was supposed to do. Like, how long has this really been going on? Like, when did this all begin? And so she freezes him, puts him back into the ground, and we think, oh, all is good, all is fine and dandy. And they kiss each other again, and then they start to realize that they like each other again, and he's starting to learn, oh, she's a witch. Shit. And we learn a bit more about Essie's past with the whole freezing situation, and they wind up back in the present, and they think all is well, that they fixed it. Note, they did not fix it. But that's part of the fun. And they're starting to date. Everything's fine and dandy. They have sex, and she stops herself from having her orgasm, and that's when we learn about the whole freezing of the dick thing because of the orgasm, because we just learned before that it was the freezing of the dick, but we didn't know the why and everything. And so she's like, I'm not gonna do any of that because I don't want to hurt you. And he tells her, hey, he walks her through the process of thinking of this as, how does it work with your power? How does it work with your magic? And I thought that was just so cute, that he's wanting to actually help her, that he does really, really like her enough to actually be willing to put himself through that danger. And she realizes, oh, I need to do this by practicing. Like with my magic, I can do this. Of course, it's orgasms, it's sex. She asks him to help her learn this, practice this. And he's like, if I have to lose a finger, I will. If I have to lose my tongue, I will. It was just so cute. I loved it. And the smut, it was very, very low-key smut. It wasn't until practically near the end of the book that any sex happened, and it wasn't very graphic. Them talking about her orgasms and them talking about the fact that they're having sex all the time and her learning all of this stuff is basically the most. We learned that she can make flowers appear. That's the most that we get. And it's like, well, I'm kind of fine with that because it's a cozy romance. It's not a romance. And I was fine with that. It's like, this is just a cute book. This is a light book. I'm not looking for heavy smut. I'm fine with this. This was the right amount for what I was wanting to experience at this time. So I'm good with this. And it was just really cute. And the fact that he was very, very willing to go down on her to help her learn, that just made me happy. But then it all goes to hell again because they go to his house. Her mother sees him and she's like, wait, that's the bad guy because his ancestor was that bad guy. She's like, oh, this may have been centuries, but it was last week for me. And Desi's like, bullshit, it was last week for us too, and we're fine. And we find out that Lilith actually did some enhancements of the protections charms on the house, and Josh woke up completely forgetting Essie. And Sienna, she just had her baby with all this, and Sienna, she remembers, and that's something that I don't really understand. So it sounds like her mother kind of just focused the magic on Josh, but it's if the protections were on the house too, wouldn't that have also done something with Sienna? That's what I don't really understand with this. I don't get it, but whatever, we need someone to know what's going on in that house. And Sienna had the baby, and there's been a lot of family trauma there as well because they're half siblings, because their father abandoned Josh's mother, and his mother was being very stupid. Well, I see what her point was, but she was cutting off her nose to spite her face because his father was very rich and was sending money, and she was refusing the money, and he was putting himself practically breaking himself down to go through law school, and it was just a whole thing. And then his father left pretty much all of his money to Sienna, and then Sienna swans in and she starts fixing up the house, and Josh is feeling some feelings of inadequacy there because she's doing all the things that he can't because she has money. And Sienna's like, hey, I have to have the money because I don't know how to do things myself. That's how I fix things, is with money. And Josh's dad left him the house. That still sounds like bullshit. You still need money. What do I know? But he did leave him all these other properties, and sounds like they're going to be fine in the end, but that's beside the point. So Josh is freaking out and he kicks Essie out of the house, and Sienna's like, what are you doing? This is your girlfriend, or whatever you're calling yourselves now. And we learned that it was Lilith, kind of, who sounds like she did something to Josh to make him forget, and then they also realize that, oh, the ghostie is still alive and they're still in trouble. So they're able to convince Josh, because it sounds like the ghostie had infected Josh by possessing him a little bit, and they do this whole witchy spell with a potion, and they all kind of kick him out, and they realize, oh, freezing isn't helping. So they actually, because Essie also has power with fire, she can call it fire easily, they have to burn him to a crisp. Like, they have to turn him to ash, and then they have to cover him with this love potion of love. And so that all works out in the end, even though he was trying to be just a horrible man to everyone, to all the women, because he is just a creepazoid. But everything works out well in the end, and there really wasn't that much issues. Like, it wasn't high stakes. I mean, it sort of was, but it wasn't, because we knew everything was going to be fine, because it's a cozy romance. But yeah, I think this was the perfect fall read. I do think there are things that could have been a little better, but overall, I thought it was great. It was a very cute, cozy read, and especially since a year passes and we see how well he and Sienna are able to work together to fix up the other houses, and they start up the stuff that she was thinking of with these yurts for wedding facilities, and he proposes to Essie, and it's so cute because he wants to get married on the anniversary of them sending the bad guy back to hell, and it was just so perfect. Was it laugh out loud funny? Bits of it, yeah. I gave it about a 3.5 out of 5, maybe a low 4, give or take, because it was very cute, and there was a lot that was going on that I didn't really talk about, but it was definitely, it fit the cozy vibes that I was wanting, and it's Halloween and still cozy, and it wasn't spooky, but it fit the ghosty, it fit the witchy vibes that I was wanting to read for the spooky season, and I could even see enjoying this more into the November, December years as well. But yes, I will talk to you guys next time, and again, if you have any book recommendations, please let me know. I really value your feedback, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.